This is the second video in the Revelation, or excuse me, the timeline series. This video is regarding Revelation 12, which is our timeline chapter in Revelation. It will tell us from the beginning of the tribulation to the end of the tribulation. So that being said, before we even get into this, let's write down a couple verses. And you can pause this so you can write down these particular days, because, I said verses, but I meant days. These days are very important to our timeline, and you want to have these very handy because a lot of the math comes off of this. Now, we're going to do a lot of other math, and I'm going to show you these things, but these 4 days are very important for doing the math. A lot of the things come off of these. So let's go ahead and write these down. And again, pause it if you need to. Trumpets 2017 happened September 22nd, 2017. Passover 21 will be March 27th, 21. Trumpets 2024 is October 3rd, 2024. And Day of Atonement 2024 is October 10th, 2024. Now again, hopefully you've got those down. I'll bring them up again, but let's kind of walk these things through. Now, the first thing to understand when it comes to a count of years is, how do you count from year to year? Now, many of us, if we're thinking of January 1st to January, how do we count from January 1st? Do we end on January 1st, or do we end on December 31st? Now, again, we're going to deal with God's calendar, but I'm just going to show you how we count, and it's going to be the same on the other calendar as well. But if you count it from January 1st to January 1st, then you're going to be a year in 1 day. And so that's why you stop at December 31st. Now, why is that important? Because if we have a 7-year tribulation, and it's going to end on a specific day, and we believe that Messiah should return on the Day of Trumpets, okay, then we have to back things up, and it has to end, or the beginning of it has to be the day after Trumpets, or sometime thereafter. Actually, it really needs to be accurate. It needs to be the day after. So because of that issue, that it has to be the day after, because if it doesn't, let's assume it starts on Trumpets. Well, that means the Messiah would have to return the day before Trumpets, so that doesn't work. That's why if you're going to get a 7-year period and it's going to end on a certain day, you have to start it the day after that on the prior year, or prior 7 years. Tribulation and Great Tribulation are 7 years. So, what day is Trumpets 2017? It was, we just discussed this, September 22nd, 2017. Now, with that being known, let's start with the Revelation 12 issues. Revelation 12:1. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. That's a special sign that happened on September 23rd, 2017. When was Trumpets? September 22nd. When did this occur? September 23rd. Following day. So that in itself is a big issue. There's this sign that happened in the sky from the stars, and it's a very rare sign. Now, some scientists will, if you'll research it, they'll say, well, it happens about every 250 years. Well, great. If it happens every 250 years, it's a great sign. But what they're not doing with their math is realizing that there is even a more special thing that happened in this particular sign that has not happened in the past 7,000 years, and will not happen again for another 7,000 years, and that is retrograde. Jupiter was in retrograde. Because of retrograde, as we come around the sun, Jupiter sometimes can appear to go in retrograde as we come around. Now, it's still moving forward, but it would appear that it does a little circle. And that's what happened here. Jupiter was in retrograde, and it stayed inside the belly of the constellation Virgo for 41 weeks. What's the length of a pregnancy? 41 weeks. I hope you can see. That's why this sign has not appeared in 7,000 years and won't appear again for another 7,000 years, because of the retrograde action. That's the important issue, is the retrograde. Okay? So, and I'll show you here the video, or a show, actually a picture of the Revelation 12 sign. And then I'm also going to show you one where it shows you the path for the retrograde. Now let's go back to Revelation 12. Revelation 12:3. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. There are 2 constellations that actually work for this. One is Draco, which is the great dragon, and the other is Serpens, which is a serpent. Draco is circumpolar, which means in the northern hemisphere it's always in the sky. So again, it's not a great sign. It doesn't say it's a great sign. 12:3 just says another sign. Okay? And so that's there. And then Serpens follows Virgo, and so it's always at the feet of Virgo. Draco is also closer to the feet, but Serpens is closer and has a specific crown on his head. I believe more towards Serpens, but either way, they're both in the sky at the same time. The real issue here for the timing is the meteor shower that happened. Now, the meteor shower is actually what started this whole thing of flat Earth. I know that's kind of crazy, but that's what started this whole thing, because they said, well, how else could the stars hit unless the Earth is flat? Well, I don't want to get into it because I don't care. But the issue is that we had what's called the Draconoid meteor shower. Now, the Draconoid meteor shower happens every year, so it's not special. But what made it special this year was the number that hit. 1/3 of all the stars that you can see in the visible universe struck the sky that night as in a meteor shower. That was October 8th, 2017. That's a Sunday night. Take it for what you will. Sign of the Creator, would we obviously be thinking of Sabbath? If I'm thinking of the evil one, I'm thinking about Sunday. So it's kind of interesting, but whatever. And so a lot of people have said, well, all these stars have to come and land on the Earth. No, a meteor shower fits. It does what's required from the verse. Now the other thing is, why are the stars there in the sky in the first place? Genesis 1:14. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. So they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're indicating what's going on. Let's go back to Revelation 12 again. Start for the next verse, 12:5. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. Interesting that it says to throne, because I think we can all go back to Revelation 5 when the seals are first shown to John, and no one who is in heaven or on earth or under the earth was there who could open them. And what are we seeing here from Revelation 12? We're seeing that she was pregnant with the child, and then the child is snatched up to the throne. So it can't be in heaven, can't be on earth, and can't be under the earth. But it can be between heaven and earth, and can be above heaven if there is anything above heaven. And so whatever this sign was, has the Messiah not in heaven at that time, because she's about ready to give birth. And what do we see right after that in Revelation 5? Then the Messiah is sitting right there at the throne. So what do we hear from Revelation 12? He's snatched up to the throne. Where does he appear in Revelation 5? At the throne. It's just right. It's clicking along. Okay, it's showing us everything is right. Now, Revelation 12:6. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Now, here's where I'm going to show you a calculator to put us. I should have mentioned, I needed to mention, Revelation 12:5. Jupiter left the belly on October 13th, 2017. So that's when the birth occurred. So there is a difference, though, because we're looking at a Gregorian calendar versus the Hebrew calendar. And they start on different times. The Gregorian starts at midnight, whereas the Hebrew starts at sunset. So we have to put that into our equation to change this. So we'll switch it over to the 14th. But if we take October 14th and then we add 1,260 days, we get March 27th, 2021. What do I just show you here? That's a day of Passover. Here's the calculator that'll show you that. Now, what's also special about this day is any time after this is when the seals can be opened from Revelation 5. Now, that day when Jupiter left the belly of Virgo, October 13, 2017, was the high Sabbath of Sukkot. It was the end of Sukkot, high Sabbath. So again, he's doing things on his calendar. Anyway, we're working on it through. Now, that should be when those of us in the land leave. Now, those who are in Judea will leave before that. We'll get to that here as well. But we have that from Matthew 24, because they leave on the abomination. We will, however, the majority of us will leave on the Passover. Now, how do we also show that Revelation 12 is walking us all the way through? Let's see about the remainder, because we just kind of walked through what would be equivalent of 3.5 years for all these signs up to that Passover. Let's see what happens after that. Revelation 12:13. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to a place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach. Times, and half a time is 3.5 years. But your ear should have been just prickling like crazy when it said 2 wings of a great eagle, because that's Exodus. Why do we say that? Exodus 19:4. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. So eagle's wings, he's telling us this is the Exodus. This is where we're supposed to be. Now there's one group who doesn't leave with us, and it's kind of a sad situation for them. They're the ones who are beheaded, and they'll be in the first resurrection. So there's one group that's not counted with us during the Exodus. And we'll see them in Revelation 12 too. Now, the other thing that really is interesting here is all these things are just signs. They're just signs. Nothing is sure until the Anti-Messiah is revealed by stopping the morning and evening sacrifices. Once that happens, we know that the signs that we see are the correct signs. Until then, they're just things we look for. Okay? And so these things fit. They fit very neatly. That doesn't mean it's right, because the Anti-Messiah has to be revealed first. But in order for him to be revealed, they have to have sacrifices. You can't stop a morning and evening sacrifice until you start a morning and evening sacrifice. And if the Jews who are in Judea are going to start the morning and evening sacrifice and follow the Torah to do it, they have to sacrifice the red heifer first. That's on Numbers 19:2. And it goes through the full litany, but this is the requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. This is a very special animal because in all of human history, there's only been between 7 and 9 of these animals ever sacrificed. We don't know if it's 7, we don't know if it's 9. It's one of those two numbers. Now, here's what's really special. A red heifer was born in Israel September 4th, 2018, to the Temple Institute. So they are watching this thing carefully. Now, it's got to be a 3-year-old, but the Creator numbers things differently than we do. When you're 2 months old, we say you're 2 months old. The Creator says you're 1 year old. That's your first year. So it has to be anything after the second year is the third year. So this animal is able to be sacrificed on September 5th, 2020, and it cannot be sacrificed after September 4th, 2021 because it's too old. Can't use it if it's too young, can't use it if it's too old. Okay? And so it's such a special animal, and the Jews know how special that animal is. I can't imagine they're going to let it go to waste. Now, from September 5th, 2020, which is the earliest that animal can be sacrificed, not saying that's the day he's going to be sacrificed, that's just the first day he could be sacrificed. If we go from then to the Passover 2021, which is March 27th, it's 203 days. Now that's if they started on the first day possible. I doubt they will, although they could. Okay, there's some things going on in Israel right now with regards to the third temple, which are making it more and more likely. But that being said, if they're going to have the morning and evening sacrifices, they have to actually start them. And I don't think they're going to start it without the red heifer. Although it doesn't say they do, I think they will. So we'll look at that. Now the next thing, as it pertains to the timeline, is with regards to, can we determine when, number one, when does the army come into Israel with the Anti-Messiah, and when does the Anti-Messiah wins the Abomination of Desolation? And we can determine those from Revelation 12. I have a video on Daniel 12, and I have a video on Daniel 12. I absolutely suggest you watch that, where I give you the details of where I get these days and the question and the answer, so you can do the math. But for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to do the math. So we start for the first issue is when the two witnesses appear, and when does the Anti-Messiah cross the river to come into Israel to attack. And we start from October 12th, 2024, which is the Day of Atonement, which we just used before. We subtract 1335 days, and we get February 15th, 2021. That's Daniel 12:5. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and the one on the opposite bank. That's because they testified before the one who has authority over the earth. The Anti-Messiah at that point in time is crossing the river. Okay. Now the other question and answer from Daniel 12 is from the abomination to the return, and that's trumpet 2024, which is October 3rd, 2024, and subtract 1,290 days. It's March 23rd, 2021. That should be the day of the Abomination of Desolation. That's when those from Matthew 24, from those who are in Judea, should leave on that day to get out. Now what will happen is the Mount of Olives will split in half, and they go through that. But if you're in Judea, get out that day. Everyone else should be leaving on Passover. And again, there's one group that's left behind because they don't know about it, they're not prepped, and their only way in later is to come in from the first resurrection. And again, talking again about the two witnesses, Revelation 12:4, the two witnesses stand before the one with authority over the earth. So we can actually determine the day of the army invading as well as the abomination. He gives us that information. Again, if you're elect, he's going to give you information. So again, these are things we should be watching for, because the abomination is the key to all these things. we can actually do the math, and I'll do it very briefly, to show when the two witnesses are killed. Because we know how long they're on Earth, and since we know when they start here from when the Anti-Messiah crosses the river, we can actually show even what day they die. So that's an interesting thing to put in, so we can actually even lock in some other factors from Revelation 12. We still haven't even finished up Revelation 12. Now we're going to leave on the sixth seal. And that's for both of us. Okay? Those who are in Judea and those from everywhere else, the sixth seal will be that long of a period of time. Now, it is my particular belief that the reason for the Abomination of Desolation, a lot of people believe it's a pig because that's what they did in Maccabees. I believe the Anti-Messiah is going to kill himself and sacrifice himself on the altar, and he'll be dead for 4 days and rise at the end of 4 days. Why do I say that? That's a messianic miracle. So the rabbis who are in Judea or Israel would then scream, that's the Messiah. He just did a messianic miracle that proves he's the Messiah. So, and we know that he has that mortal head wound that is healed. So that's my belief, that's my opinion. That is not saying I've got this thing locked in, although I think, it's not just an opinion, it's a very strongly held opinion. It's not something I'm wishy-washy about. I'm very strong that I think he sacrifices himself and then comes back up. But why? Because that also locks in things for both days. And it would try to say, okay, he is the Messiah. So the actual anti-Messiah up until the abomination is just the shell of the person. He's the entity, he's the body that the demon, or I shouldn't say demon, but the entity from the abyss will inhabit and possess, because the anti-Messiah comes up from the pit. So if he comes up and possesses the body, if the body has sacrificed itself on the altar, then he comes, possesses the body, and we go from there. And again, it's going to look, and if we look at the sixth seal, it's looking just like when the Messiah died in a lot of ways. And then one of the things we always have worried about is during the seals, aren't we going to be out? Aren't we, losing our homes and everything? But right after that, that's where Revelation 6, it comes in the verse 15. Then the kings of the earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it? So as soon as we leave, then it's all over for everyone left behind, because then he's going to pour out the wrath. Okay? But we're still in our homes up until that Passover. When we get out, the world's going to notice, not that we're gone, they don't care about us, but they're going to notice that now the wrath is on them, and then it's too late to wake up. Unless, again, you come from the first resurrection. Now, let's compare the sixth seal to the death of the Messiah. The sun turned black like sackcloth, Matthew 27:45. There's darkness over the land. And again, that's the sixth seal. The sun turned black like sackcloth. And then Matthew 27:45, there's darkness over the land. Mark 15:33, there's darkness over the land. Luke 23:44, there's darkness over the land. Luke 23:45, the sun stopped shining. Matthew 27:54, there's an earthquake. All these are basically very similar to this sixth seal. So I think that's basically, we're out at that point in time. Now, the next date that would be on the calendar would be first fruits. And as soon as we leave, what's the next event? Well, because we'd be leaving Day of Unleavened Bread, would be first fruits, and that's April 4th, 2021. Now, it's my belief that that's when those who are in the 144,000 will reach Mount Sinai. Everyone else who is on the Exodus event, okay, which will be those remaining who are not in the 144,000 from Judea, and those who are from the rest of the world in itself who are not from Judea, should arrive at Mount Sinai on the first day of the third month. That's Exodus 9:1. You arrive at Mount Sinai. That will be May 10th, 2021. So kind of write that down so that if you're leaving on the boat, which is Deuteronomy 28:68, then you're taken to Egypt and sold. They try to sell you into slavery, but the Nile River dries up. They flip out, and then you're going to be released with plunder. And I've got a video on that as well. But then you will then leave. But you know how long you've got, because you know you've got to be at Mount Sinai on May 10th, 2021. So you can just kind of see when you are arrested. And you also have the other date in there, which will be when you actually leave Egypt. He gives us those 2 days. So you're not going to be there long. Okay? So the next event that will happen is the timeline of when people can be beheaded and be in the first resurrection. Because you have to actually, if you're left behind, you have to survive the trumpet judgments. Revelation 14:13, then I heard a voice from heaven say, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them. That's after the seventh trumpet judgment. So that's when things will occur that they can be beheaded. Now we see that as well in Revelation 12. And I know you're thinking, how do you see that in Revelation 12? Well, let's walk it through. In Revelation 12, assuming I've got a computer that will work here for a minute. It's a real good question whether or not I'm going to have a computer that will work for a minute. And then we go down to almost the end of the thing, okay? Which will be verse 15. We just left at verse 14. That was our last verse. Then from his mouth, which is the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with a torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river, and the dragon had spewed out from his mouth. Now, my belief is that will be, because I've been looking through the dams and things, because a dam breaking would do just that. Come in like a torrent to try to wash us away. And the one that I think that fits the best in that region of where we'll be is the Mosul Dam, which is on the Tigris River in Iraq, which is where we'll be at a certain point in time. And so when we go below the Mosul Dam, be prepared for an absolute miracle, because the earth's going to swallow up this water when the dam breaks. The Mosul Dam is extremely fragile. It's built on soft ground, and they know this thing's about ready to break. They keep trying to fix it almost every day, trying to pump more concrete in it, trying to keep it to not break. Now, let's go back to Revelation 12:17. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who kept God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. So many people see this verse and they don't recognize this. That's the group that's in the first resurrection. They think that's got to be those in the Exodus. No, those in the Exodus are the ones he tried to sweep away with the river. This is the remainder. Okay? These will come in on the first resurrection. Now, because of this, I believe this is another indication that this is when the bowl judgments start. And do we have a specific time for that? I don't know that we can lock in the day that the bowl judgment starts or that the river will break. When we're on the Exodus, we'll know. But we do know that it looks to me when it goes, he's going to go wage war against the rest of the offspring, that appears to be, all right, all the trumpets have now went through. Now the bowls are going to start. He does the river and bowls go. And because of that, he's able to then go and kill those in the second church of Revelation who are captured. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. And that's what I have for the Revelation 12 timeline. Again, I know it takes a little bit of time. This is the longest portion of a teaching with regards to a timeline, but it's good to have those things in your background and have it locked in.